So we're looking at Unit 2, and we're looking at Learning Outcome 2, and the learning outcome is be able to communicate with learners and other learning professionals to promote learning and progression. And there's 3 points that we're doing. 2.1 is analyze the benefits and limitations of communication methods and media used in your own area of specialism. 2.2, use communication methods and media to meet individual learner needs. And then 2.3, communicate with other learning professionals to meet learner needs and encourage progression. So on here, what it is, a lot of this that you'll see when you're working within the primary environment, you might not be using different aspects of media as much, but as your learners get older, just think about the two of us now, how we communicate. We'll do text messages, we'll do emails, we'll go over the phone. So try and keep it in a wide open eye for it, because we're talking about learners of all ages, especially when we're talking about media here. So go on here. So we're just going to go straight into it. So 2.1, analyze benefits and limitations of communication methods and media used in your own area of specialism. So when you're actually communicating with students, so you do use a variety of methods. You know, we do verbal and non-verbal communication, where we'll do gestures or we'll just say, okay, well done. But then we use media on a daily basis. So if you think about it in a simple form, when you're in your classroom and you're doing a lesson, you'll have a presentation that's been made on your smartboard, or you'll have photocopies that you've made, or handouts that you've printed out, emails, texts, phone. So if you're doing it for older learners. So we use a big range of media within our daily sessions as well. But we do adapt our communication to suit our learners, to suit their needs. So sometimes we'll use our tone and pace of voice. We'll use our body language. We'll use sign language. You might have a hearing loop that you've got installed. You might do simplified language. You might do gestures. So whatever the needs are, you're doing different. You're adapting yourself. Now, if we were in a face-to-face environment, I'd probably have a whole lot of handouts that I'd want to give you, or activities that I'd say, okay, let's be in a big classroom environment. If we had more than one learner, I'd say, go ahead, work together, fill this chart in, think of different ideas, work together, and come back to me. This is your topic and this is your topic. I'd give somebody verbal communication, somebody non-verbal, somebody media, and say, work in your points. But because we're doing one-to-one over like a communication, like a conferencing site, well, we have to adapt the way we talk and the way we do things. So we're not doing as many of those activities. We've not got breakout rooms on here. We can't, do teamwork because there's no other learners except for yourself, and I'm here with you. So we've got to, even with this, we're adapting, aren't we? So just to go over non-verbal communication. So we communicate through speech. We use lots of different forms of communication. We'll do non-verbal communication as well. So when I say when we're communicating through speech non-verbally, I mean those little cues that you go like, like those. I know you're making a sound, but it is a type of non-verbal communication because you're not really saying anything. You're just prompting someone. Now, we also use body language, so even the way you appear can sometimes communicate. And for appearance, I mean, like if you're standing there and you've got your arms folded across your chest, or if you've got your legs crossed, or if you're just slouching, or if you look bored, or your hands are in your pockets, that is a form of communication, is where you're saying, oh, no, I'm not too bothered, or I'm tired, or I don't want to be here. And even the way you dress sometimes, where you'll go in and you'll be dressed in a particular way, will show, are you ready for work? Are you feeling not too great today? Are you to your normal standards or not? So all of these varieties will give you different types of communication. So I've got a little bit of a chart here. You might have seen this before. You probably will see it as you're going forward. So it's just non-verbal communication. You do facial expression. So you smile, frown, you give someone a wink, or you look a bit confused. Then you might have touch or contact, and you'll probably do this a lot more in a younger base as well, where if your students are upset, you might, pat them on the shoulder or give them a hug and say, "Are you okay?" Gestures when you're teaching at the front of a classroom and you've got a large class in front of you. Sometimes you just want to show someone that they've done really good without making a big point of it. So you'll give them a thumbs up or like a yay, like jazz hands and those things. Your proximity, so how close you are to someone, that will actually make a difference as well. So if you're physically close to someone that you know or is comfortable with you, they might find it reassuring. But if it's somebody that you've not met for the first, you've met for the first time and you're not that familiar with them, if you're too close to them, they're going to feel threatened. So it depends on how comfortable they are with you. And then you have eye contact. So if you've got long, unbroken eye contact, it can express a lot of different things like interest, attraction, or if you're feeling angry and being hostile. Or if you have short or broken eye contact, it can show that you're nervous or shy. Now, for eye contact, this is not one that I'm the greatest at. On here, for eye contact, I'm okay to make eye contact for a little while, but then I start feeling uncomfortable. It feels like my eyes are going to start watering and things, so I look away and I look at everything but the face. So sometimes it just means that maybe someone's not that comfortable maintaining eye contact as well. So again, your body language can help you or hinder you about how you communicate. So depending on what you're doing, what your stance is, you can show that you're happy, comfortable, focused. If you're fidgeting, you might show that, oh, I don't really know what to do, I'm a bit confused. Or if you're in a meeting and or you're speaking to them, you know that you're talking one-to-one with your students and you're speaking to them, but there's one that's colouring or fiddling with a pen. Maybe they're not really understanding what to do or they're distracted. Are you okay with the body language and the non-verbal part? Yeah.
Yes.
And then on here, we're going to go into the media section. Now, the media is quite a profound tool that we can use within our learning environments. It really has helped us to access so many different learning strategies and little techniques that we can use on a daily basis, even from, creating PowerPoints, or if you're running quickly to the photocopier and copying an extra couple of sheets out, you've printed something, you've sent it there. It takes seconds, doesn't it, to create 30 worksheets rather than having to write them all out. So it really saves a lot of time. Now, for this, I thought the COVID-19 pandemic was quite a good thing to focus on when we're talking about media, because before we'd use media in a normal way. So the basics of what I used to do in a primary school environment or in a school environment, media-wise, I'd make presentations, I'd photocopy things, I'd send things from the printer, go and print them out. I'd probably use an iPad once in a while or a couple of apps. Those on the iPad where you teach children coding, where the Daisy the dinosaur, show them how to grow and expand and shrink. So that would be the basics of it. We might have walkie-talkies where we're talking to each other or texting through WhatsApp with our class groups for the staff. But again, that was the gist of it. That was the limitations of what I used. But when it came to the pandemic, when things got locked down, there were so many new things that came about that were fantastic tools. I mean, things that I used myself to support my students, talk to my colleagues. I saw my children were using different programs as well. So everybody was on something different or doing things. So I noticed that there were lots of video conferencing platforms. We had Zoom. So my children do tutoring after school. So rather than do it face-to-face, they just did it over Zoom instead. We had school doing live lessons through Microsoft Teams. We're doing one through Join Me. Then we had like Satchel One and Google Classroom, and on there they could go on and they could access live lessons, access the timetable, put their homework onto it, speak to their teachers, send them messages, tell them if there was any issues that they needed to, talk about, and then they'd get a phone call back. So there were so many different things that you weren't even aware of. I mean, my son told me about this the other day, Zello, and I was like, what on earth is Zello? Because I've never heard of it before. But it's just like a homework site where your homework is put on it by your teachers, and then the kids do it, and then they'll just submit it. So there's no need for, like, what we did when we were in school. We were, like, writing things out and copying them.
Yeah.
So it's a whole new world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember having to, I was creating some science videos for about a year ago for my year 1 class. And I was loading them up onto Tapestry. And the very first time I logged into Tapestry, I had no idea what to do. I was like, oh, this is so hard. But because I used it a couple of times, I felt it was the easiest thing to do after that. So it's always just getting used to things, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, all of these have all got different names, but the gist is the same. The ideas are the same. It's all there to do your homework, you're getting live lessons, you're getting in touch, talking to each other, you can monitor what your students did. So when you were in lockdown, you might have had access to some systems where you could show what the attainment was, how many times out of your class group, did everybody log in and access the homework? Were they logging in daily, or were they doing it once a week, or were they doing it first thing? So you can actually monitor if they were logging in and what sort of work they were actually submitting as well. So it was a nice thing that was available.
Yeah.
So after all my talking, because obviously we've had different experiences, were there any different systems that you had to use when you were in lockdown as well?
In the first lockdown, in the both lockdown, I would say, throughout it, that I was making calls to parents to see everything is fine and, any help they needed for homework, or apart from that, even like, any concerns if they would like to share. So I was calling every week each parent of my class. So sometimes I was talking with children as well to make them feel aware that we are around. So just to feel them, that we are online doing classes as well on Zoom. We were doing like 3-4 times in a day, all the sessions like literacy, maths, phonics, and reading. So we were doing on Zoom. Whereas my children, they were accessing Teams. So they were having online classes on Teams. Apart from that, like whatever we were doing, like if any parent was not able to do printing at home, so we were arranging homework pack that they can come and collect from the school. So I was just communicating with whoever was in the school that, okay, this parent will come at this time, if you can make the things ready for that parent. Or there was time as well that we were posting them as well. Whoever can't come or whoever can't print, we were posting the homework to them as well on a day-to-day basis.
So with all of that, you were keeping in use with the media, you were specializing it to the area that you're in, and then you were also meeting individual needs as well. You were doing equality and diversity, because not everybody's got good internet access. And I know we had all these little cards and things that we could give out from schools to give internet access. And then also, if they couldn't physically get on, if there were more than one child, you had those printed packs. So it's fantastic with the way that your school embraced that diversity and was able to identify these needs and what actually needed to be done.
Yeah.
So do you have any questions before we go over how to answer this question?
No, I'm fine with it.
So on here, I just want you to tell me what sort of communication methods you use to communicate in your own school. So you can talk about verbal, non-verbal, you can talk about the different types of media. So you could mention what you did in within lockdown and how you supported the children through both lockdowns by doing live lessons, phone calls, getting work printed out and getting it distributed. But then I actually want you to put in a paragraph about what the benefits of this were. So the benefits are that no one's getting secluded because you're making sure that you're keeping in touch on a consistent basis. But then the limitations, Now, there's probably a lot of limitations that you can think of. Maybe not every parent has the same ability to support their child. Maybe they're not that as interested. You lose that personalism. Some children were falling back. So there's not internet access for everybody. Not everybody has 4 or 5 devices that maybe 4 or 5 children can use. So you're having to share these things. So put down 1 paragraph of benefits and 1 paragraph of limitations to support this.
Okay.
Yeah. So on to 2.2. So here is use communication methods and media to meet individual learner needs. Now, on here, when we want to look at meeting individual learner needs, we try to enhance what sort of effectiveness we do with them. We try to really, cater to each student in their own way, because we know that it's important that if you find the right way to communicate with your student, you're going to build rapport with them and they'll want to work because you know what works with them. So there's some ways that we can do this. So when you're communicating with the students, adapt your tone and pace. So when you're talking to them, use appropriate timing. So, and duration. So if you know that somebody's got a short attention span, or if somebody has learning difficulties, or if there's a particular child that really needs toilet breaks every 30 minutes, rather than have them miss out on a session, make sure that you can adapt it in, say, okay, this is your 2-3 minute break, go do what you're doing, get with this task, just to try and split it up.
Okay.
2-way communication as well. So make sure that you're listening to your students, you're responding to them. Now, what I like to do for 2-way communication, have you ever done in school where you use those KWL charts? Do you know where it's like a chart that's split up into 3 sections? And if you're talking about, say, the weather system, then you would have 3 boxes, and you would say the topic is the weather system, and 1 section would be, this is what I know. So the students would write down what they already know about the weather. The second one would be what I want to know. Then they'd have put down a list of questions in the second box. So you'd find out what they already know. Then you'd find out what they'd like to know. And then when the lesson has finished, you can get them to fill in that last box where they can say what I have learned. So that's a nice way of getting feedback. So you identify what they actually knew before the lesson started, what questions they have, and then you can actually respond to those questions in the lesson. And then you're getting feedback about how effective the lesson was. Was it good? Did the children understand? Were they able to get all the information, or do you need to go back and go over this lesson again? So I like that little part there. So do you have any ways that you get feedback from your students?
Not really, but only at the end of the lesson, like we just sit on the carpet and ask them, okay, so what was it like? Okay, what do you feel? So asking the questions about whatever they have learned.
And then it helps you as well, doesn't it? Later on, then you can say, oh, okay, child A needs a little bit more help, and then child C was fine. We can just let them do independently, and so on. Yeah. Use appropriate language as well. So if you use a language that maybe somebody in year 6 or a high schooler would understand for a child in nursery reception, it's not going to work, because if you don't know the meaning of a word, it's going to go over their head. So make sure you use the right language.
Yeah.
Make sure that your students are on the right level of study. And I think that this happens so often in early years, is that you're continuously doing assessments, you're chopping and changing every term. You're in this phonics group, you need to be moved up or moved down. So this is probably something that you do without, as a normal thing anyway.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about the subject matter on technical language, just make sure if it's a word that you think somebody might get confused at, ask them. Say, do you know what this word is? Or do you think you can explain? And then give them a chance to try and explain what it is. But then you can say, oh, okay, here it is. And then tell them the answer and say, right, this is what this means. It gets them quite interacted with you as well.
Yeah.
again, use verbal, non-verbal body language. And then we also use a mixed medium within presentations as well. So we're doing PowerPoint presentations, we're giving out handouts, we're doing activity sheets, and then we use resources to back it up as well. So even when you are presenting at the beginning of the class and you say, right, this is the maths lesson we're doing today, we're going to add in twos, or we're going to do number bonds, then you've got that paperwork, those activities to back it up, haven't you?
Yeah.
And then at the end, I quite like this because sometimes I lose attention and I need somebody to let me know what I've done. So if you've had a long lesson, even if it's like a good 10 minutes where you've been talking, you've got to understand that, especially young learners, they will lose attention. And you've probably had it on a daily basis where you've set everyone to work, or the class teacher said, right here, everybody do the work. And then you go around the classroom and there'll be at least 3 or 4 children saying, I don't know what to do. So,
Yes.
because, yeah. So I used to have that so often, and so I learned that summarize your content, make sure that you get everyone's attention and say, this is important now. You need to listen, and then just tell them the useful bits of the information. Say, we're going to be doing this, that, and the other, and this is what you need to do. So just break it down and summarize it.
Okay.
And then there's different tricks that you can do as well. You can involve other people, to communicate with each other. This will develop their social interaction as well, and help them to be tolerant and learn how to take turns and share ideas and work together. So doing group work with students, getting them to help each other, getting a higher ability child to help somebody who may have mixed ability, sometimes lower, sometimes in the medium ability. So getting them to work together. Having one-to-one support like TAs or somebody that's come in to observe, they can work with them as well. And sometimes you might have specialist support. Because I remember telling you about, I used to have this behavioural psychologist that came in and would support me with a child that I was doing one-to-one with. She would sit down with me. We had specialist TAs come in as well. So they'd sit down and they'd, give you that extra support and say, right, this is how we can adapt it, or you can watch how they work. So it's nice to have others involved too. So are you okay on this section? Do you want to go over anything?
No, I'm fine.
So let you know how I like this answered. So here it's very important. Again, you've got to use the present tense. So just make sure that I do and I can and I always, those type of things. Not I did or I would.
Okay.
So talk about the different communication methods you use. So just say I use this, that, and the other. Include the different media you use. So how do you support and meet each learner's needs? And I've got a little bit of ideas here. You can say that I use PowerPoints, assistive technology. So maybe sometimes you'll use special softwares to communicate with people. You might have English as additional language softwares like Welcome put onto there. You got picture exchange cards, and I know that they're just physical cards, but it is communication in general that we're talking about as well. So you got handouts, resources, your body language, your verbal language. So these are some points that you can include into it.
Okay.
So does that make sense? Are you okay with this?
So basically, it's a kind of reflective account that how I communicate and use media to meet their needs. Okay.
And if it makes it easier for you, I didn't want to be too example heavy on this because I know I ask you to put an example for everything more or less. But if it makes it easier for you, even using an example is okay. You can say, I have a particular group of students who have diverse learning needs, and then you can talk about what their learning needs are, and then just say how you support them.
Okay.
So 2.3 is communicate with other learning professionals to meet the individual learner needs and encourage progression. So when we're communicating, we actually talk to other professionals as well. We don't just communicate with our students and that's it. Sometimes we'll want to speak to staff members who work with us internally. Sometimes we'll want to work with external agencies. But whatever it is, you're there to, speak to others and get information and just to help you to, and guide you to get your learner to where they need to be.
Okay.
It's there. So we've got a section of internal staff. So for internally, we'll liaise with internal staff like teaching associates, trainers, teachers, assessors, administration. So some of these, your senior leadership team. So within the primary school area, you won't really see as many assessors around. So an assessor, you probably end up seeing in like sixth form and like where I am now, where we're marking coursework and things. So some roles you'll be more familiar with, some you won't. But regardless of who you're speaking to, you could even be speaking to your admin staff to talk about truancy and making sure that a child comes in. But you can talk to them about particular things. So you're liaising with them to talk about adapting or differentiating your curriculum. You notice I use adaptation, differentiation, interventions, and one-to-one quite a lot because I really believe that these are beneficial for every student that you go to.
Yeah.
You'll sometimes have staff members that are, trained in specialist support. So you'll have Braille, you've got British Sign Language, Makaton. I remember a member of staff who was like, I believe she was a saint with the patients she had. She used to work with children who had behavioural issues. So she came into our school. We had a few children that needed to be that needed a little bit of specialist support, and it was like the angel had been sent down to us, and the techniques and the tips that she taught us, and how to behave ourselves and how to react, especially our facial expressions when we were, speaking to particular children. And it's so you can get specialist information as well from your own internal staff members as well. You probably get called on to translate quite a lot. I used to get that done with me as well, because if you have a language that you can speak and there's a parent or a student that needs assistance with that, so you're doing a lot of translating. One-to-one interventions, carrying out assessments. So you might have a senior member of staff, or you might be asked by your class teacher to say, okay, Geeta, I want you to go and do these phonics assessment, go and see what these children can recap and where they're struggling. And I like this one here, offering support and advice. So whenever I get stuck, and there are times that I do get stuck, and because I'm not the oracle of all knowledge, and I don't think any of us are, there are parts where we need a bit more experience or we can learn from colleagues. But just going and speaking to a colleague of yours, somebody who you trust, somebody who you know has a good amount of experience, then going and saying that I've got this issue and I've got a learner who I need to support in this way, that and the other, what do you suggest? And they could probably give you a whole load of advice and ideas. But on the flip side as well, even if you go and speak to a staff member that might not have that much experience and they might be newly qualified, they might have come up with new, models and theories that they know about. And so it's nice to get fresh ideas as well.
Yeah.
And again, there's external agencies that you might want to work with. So you've got social services, community nurses, dentists, GPs, police, educational psychologists, speech and language therapists. So any of these could be coming into your school to give you a bit of a hand. There might be an issue where a family is within social services, so you're going to liaise with them to see who is allowed to pick them up, what are they allowed to do, are there certain restrictions. You might just have even the opticians coming in to do eye tests, or a nurse coming in to do health checks. So you do liaise with different people.
Yeah.
So when you're working with other agencies, again, this will help progression. So if you've got a student that needs some physical therapy, for example, then their physiotherapist can come in and teach you those exercises and say, like, for 20 minutes a day, we'd like to get this put in, and just to try and develop their physiotherapy and give them a bit more, exercise time, so that they're actually having it done across the board. So they're getting it done in the appointments, at home, and at school. So it really helps to merge everything. And they can give you personalized strategies to support students as well. So like I said, I worked with a behavioral therapist, which was fantastic for me. It really helped me to understand different strategies that I could use. So they do really come into a lot of handy when you're doing work. So have you ever had to work with, I know you remember mentioning that you had some referrals done to external agencies, but have you had any sort of services come into school?
Yes, I was having a girl in my class. She was having hearing impairment.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, initially I think they were not aware. So, but eventually we start having, some specialists coming to teach, give a training to the teacher that how do you
Yeah.
look, how do you adjust. Then she can tell whether she can hear you or not. And then she trained me and the teacher. Then it should be look like T shape, so that means she can hear you. Or if she's saying no, then you can replace the thing in her ear. So yes, they were coming. Apart from that, even for behavior issues, there was one therapist who used to come. We because we have lots of SEN children in our school as well. So in the past, I remember there was like therapists like coming for physiotherapy. So for the children to do the exercise and
Yeah.
training the center staff that how many times they have to do the exercise with them and what exercises they can do.
And I bet they were able to give you so much information that you might not have realized that you've got to do this, or especially with the young girl that needed, you might not have understood that her hearing aid batteries might be finished, or she's
Yes.
struggling. So it's nice to have someone come in and just say, right, this is what you do, and, give you the steps to go through it.
Yeah.
So, as working so many years within school, you know that when a student feels involved, when they feel cared for, when they feel like you're paying attention to them, they're going to be more engaged, aren't they? They're going to want to learn. And some children will learn fast, some will learn a little bit slower, some will need more help. But regardless of that, we're there to support them, to go and meet their needs and give them the same access and knowledge that all the other children have. So when you're taking that time and effort to try and understand them and to, speak to staff members that you work with, or even liaise with other agencies, it really does show that you're making that effort, and they really do get a lot more engaged with the work as well.
Yeah.
And again, it helps you to adapt your learning environment as well, doesn't it? You might have an area where you know that a child maybe, I think it's called dyspragia, where they're a little bit, they're always falling down, or they're always getting hurt. They can be a little bit clumsy. So you know that you need to keep your areas clean, and there's nothing in the way that if this child is constantly falling down or getting hurt, that there's no dangers to them. So you just adapt, don't you?
Yeah.
So you can use different strategies. Like you said, you had your support in how to assist the little girl with her hearing. You've had physiotherapy support. You've had behavior management support. You get advice, and sometimes you get training and teaching for staff as well. I remember there was a young boy who was going to be starting in nursery who was completely visually impaired, so he couldn't see at all. So before he even started, 6 months before that, we knew that he was going to be coming. The TA that was going to, they hired a TA. They started teaching her how to do Braille. So by the time he got there, she had a good grasp of it, and she was able to start teaching him through play and learning as well. So it's nice to have that extra support to start off with.
Yeah.
So all of this support that we're talking about, it helps you to create a consistent level of support. again, if there's a certain strategy or a certain exercise that a child does in an appointment they're doing at home, and if you're carrying it on at school, they'll be like, oh yeah, this is exactly how I do it. Because if somebody came up to me and said, right, my child needs to do a walk for 10 minutes and they need to do this certain exercises, and they verbally told me how to do it, I might get an idea of it and I might say, oh, okay, that's fine. But then it might turn out that I'm doing it wrong, or the child might say, no, this is not how it's done. It's like this. So they're spending most of their time explaining it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're actually shown it and you know exactly what you're meant to do and you've got a set pattern to follow, you know that you're going to give them the good and right amount of support that they actually need. So have you got any questions or anything you'd like to talk about before I go into the tips to answer?
No, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So on here for 2.3, I just want you to include a paragraph about the different learning professionals that might be involved. So just have a paragraph and talk about how you've got your admin staff, your management, your teaching assistants, teachers, then how you've got safeguarding officers, SENCO, you've got your physiotherapist, behavioral therapists, you know, all these nurses, doctors that might come in. So just have a paragraph about all the different learning professionals and how they could be involved in the support.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I'd like you to include a very nice detailed example of a time you communicated with other learning professionals. So how did you communicate them? What did you do to meet the needs of learners, and how did that help to encourage their progression? So you could even talk about the young girl with the hearing aid and how the professional came in and taught you tips and strategies and techniques, how to understand when she needed a hearing aid change, or, you know, little bits and bobs. So you can just choose an example that you're comfortable with and put that in.
Okay. So first I have to explain like how these people help as a professional.
Yes.
Okay.
So just on that section, just say that these are the different people that I could be involved with. So just list them, put them inside, you know, use commas to list them, and then just put down like an overview that they can help to provide tips and tricks and strategies and how to involve students. They can give behavioral advice, they can give physical advice. They can also help you how to give you advice on how to differentiate your work, or, you know, management strategies, those type of things. So like an overview, and then you're coming into your details in the example.
Okay.
Yeah. So are you okay with the learning outcome too?
Yes, I am.
Brilliant. I'll